If you've walked down the pet food aisle at your local store lately, you've probably seen words like eco-friendly, responsibly sourced, environmentally conscious, or even just green, right? Slapped across bags, boxes, and all the company websites behind them. The problem is figuring out what those terms actually mean and whether they mean anything at all.
Yeah, you and I and most other pet owners out there are generally wanting to make decisions that are really good for both their furry friends and the planet, right? But when prices continue to rise, information feels contradictory. And companies seem to make bigger, bolder promises like we've seen before, and this often feels like an impossible task.
That's why in today's episode, we'll explore why sustainability feels so complicated, why sustainable products often cost more than ones that aren't specifically sustainable, how to spot meaningful claims from marketing buzzwords, and what practical steps consumers can take towards sustainability without feeling too overwhelmed.
So, whether you're deeply invested in sustainability or simply trying to make informed decisions without getting lost in the marketing, this episode is definitely for you.
Welcome to Barking Mad, a podcast powered by BSM Partners.
We're your hosts, Dr. Stephanie Clark.
And I'm Jordan Tyler. So, did some data digging in preparation for this episode, and here are some numbers. According to a survey of pet parents that was conducted in 2022, so a little bit older, but I think this still rings true today, and it might even be a little higher. Between 52 and 64% of pet owners are skeptical when it comes to pet food companies that claim their products are sustainable. We're just not buying it. Fewer than 1 in 5 say that they just believe those claims at face value. So you see a bag and you see a claim and you say, yeah, that's probably true. Fewer than 1 in 5 people do that. I know I am not that half of a person. I'm definitely in the skeptic camp. But despite all that skepticism, right, we have 60 to 69% of pet owners saying that they do research on sustainability before they purchase a product from a company or purchase a product outright. So like they're trying, they care, and they want to do it right. They just feel like they're being lied to, or I don't know, like everything's being greenwashed. And that kind of sucks.
Misled.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I think there's multiple things in the current landscape right now that are contributing to this. And Steph, what do you think some of those are?
Oh, goodness. So, I think it's a couple different things. Like everything, I think there's a couple different things. I think there's just a lot of information, a lot of whether it's right, wrong, indifferent. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of claims. There's a lot of people, brands saying sustainable, but like what truly is sustainable? What does it really even mean? Is your packaging sustainable? Are you carbon neutral? Are you purchasing land to then plant trees? Like what does sustainable truly mean? So I think that like in and of itself, baseline is utterly confusing. It confuses me. I'm like, oh, sustainable. But then when I started formulating and doing all of this innovation, I'm like, well, where's your line of sustainability?
Totally. Yeah. And it feels different for every brand and every company too, right? And so that makes it even more confusing because there's no standard. So yeah. No wonder we're confused. And then you pair that with things like, just rising prices in general, economic uncertainty and tension, and just the growing skepticism that we kind of have as consumers toward corporations, right? We feel like corporations have forgotten about us. And that's really deep in this sense of consumer mistrust across really all sorts of categories, certainly not just in pet food, but in pet food.
Well, I was talking to someone last night and they made a really interesting comment when it was, what does the landscape of pet kind of look like for the future? And I was like, it's open, right? Like the world is our sustainable oyster. You can kind of go into whatever direction. And their response was, don't you think we have too many options? That it's just utterly overwhelming. And I'm like, oh, I guess when you take a step back, like if you're an entrepreneur, now's the time to get in. But if you're a pet owner, which one of these 50 bags on this one wall in this one aisle of these many stores am I going to pick? And that
So
alone, like,
true.
paralysis by analysis, guilty, amen. Like, that, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, even people that like have this industry inside knowledge, like you and I, like we're still confused. And that just speaks to how confusing this is. So, yeah, we're frustrated. We're not the only ones that are frustrated. But joining us today in solidarity is Allison Reser Hamburger, Director of Sustainability and Innovation with the Pet Sustainability Coalition, who's super, super knowledgeable about sustainability and pet care, but she'll be one of the first to admit it can be a confusing and frustrating topic.
Sustainability is basically weighing all of your trade-offs. Like that is what this work is, of like, okay, I have this thing. If I send it to rendering, it's going to take energy, but then it's going to get used. Like, what are my other options, and what is the best total outcome? And that's where it gets really complicated, because sometimes the energy is worse, but like the land use is better, or like the trade-offs get really complicated. And that's where like a company who has goals in all areas can kind of do this juggling. Just like PSC tells companies all the time, like, progress is better than perfection. Like, no company can be perfectly sustainable. No human can be perfectly sustainable either.
So, just in case we don't feel guilty, just a general in life, we feel guilty about sustainability. And we feel guilty about what we feed our pets, even when we're trying to do our best. For those of us who are moms, we have mom guilt. Just bring on all the guilt. But why is that? And personally, I think it's due to the lack of standards, like we had talked about, around sustainability claims. Coming back to that dreaded word, greenwashing, there's a ton of sustainability language out there, like planet friendly and eco conscious. And those terms don't really mean anything at all.
My personal favorite, I think, is just green. It's
Just
like
green.
that's actually just a color, though. So
Green
but
M&M. It's sustainable. It's the only one.
yeah, so but yeah, no, greenwashing, it happens. It's everywhere. Like we said earlier, it doesn't just happen in pet. It happens across fashion, in the automobile industry, electronics, airlines, furniture, and yeah, obviously pet food as well. And I wanted to share just one non-pet food related example. In 2021, there's a nonprofit called Changing Markets Foundation, analyzed more than 4,000 products from 12 clothing brands. So a lot of these were fast fashion brands. So not the most sustainable anyway, but some of these fast fashion brands are making sustainable claims. And so we want to know how true those claims actually are. Turns out 59% of all green claims couldn't be substantiated, according to Changing Markets Foundation. And H&M, which touts its H&M Conscious tag, which is green, by the way, on some of its clothing to indicate sustainability, it was actually one of the worst offenders. 96% of H&M's green claims being pretty much bogus. So yeah, we don't love that. And we can see, right, why we have a mistrust for sustainability claims. And there are plenty of examples in pet food, and I wanted to kind of go through some of those. The first one being, drumroll please, everybody's going to be shocked. Human grade is always better. And to speak on that a little bit, you guys have heard Stephanie and I talk about it before, but we're not alone. Let's hear from Allison.
I think people assume that this means it's better for their pet, it's better for the environment potentially, it's better quality. And what it actually means, it's a regulated term that just means that every ingredient that is in that finished product has to be stored and handled and processed in compliance with how human food would be. And so, yes, like that can mean different parts of the animal, but my wish for that claim is that pet owners understood that actually pet food, similarly to human food, also has to be safe and produced in sanitary conditions and truthfully labeled. And so even if it's not human grade labeled, it's still regulated and likely a very safe product for your pet. And when it comes to sustainability, there is definitely an opportunity for the pet industry to complement the human food industry by feeding our pets the stuff that we don't like to eat.
So yeah, human grade, it sounds really cool. It sounds like it's awesome, the best thing that we could give our pets, but it has nothing to do with sustainability. And in some ways, it's actually working against sustainability goals that we're trying to accomplish as an industry.
I was actually talking to someone about human grade, and they're like, yeah, but it's so much more healthier. It's so much more nutritious. And I was like, yeah, cupcake is human grade. Oh, never mind. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. So anyway, it's okay. Don't make that mistake again. No, just kidding.
Just don't let it happen again.
So anyway, segueing to byproducts. As Allison alluded to, the use of rendered ingredients is one of the most sustainable practices that the pet food industry has. And it's been doing it for a long, long time. Like, guys, it's fine. What you put in really matters, but you can have a quality product on the end. But clever marketing, marketing, has turned consumers against this. And it's actually turning consumers against sustainability. Because you have to think about it in this way. And I'll go on this tangent and I'll reel it back in. If we don't eat it and we don't use it, it's going to go in our landfills. Right? So if you haven't listened already and you still want to hear our lovely voices, check out our recent episode, Breaking the Byproduct Bias, because we're not holding any punches back. And we're going to talk about it all. So if you want to listen to that, find it in our show notes below. So jumping to that, let's talk about the next myth. You know us, we love debunking myths. We love talking about what everyone else doesn't want to talk about. Let's talk about the word natural. That automatically means it's better for the environment, right? Natural, better for our health, better for the environment. Right, Jordan?
How many times do we have to say it?
The second claim is natural. People think that this means that it is, again, environmentally friendly, it's less processed, it's healthier, it's premium, potentially. Those are the associations when we hear natural. It just has to have only ingredients derived from plants, animals, or mineral sources. It can go through processing, and it can't have any artificial substances. And so, like, that is the technical definition. So potentially that association with less processed is true, but it does not have anything to do with environmental impact at all. So that is just a false association that I would like to move away from.
Yeah, we've shared this example before, but arsenic. Arsenic is natural. It's also a deadly toxin. Most methane is natural. It's also one of the most prominent greenhouse gases contributing to climate change. Palm oil is a plant-based natural product. It's also one of the key culprits of deforestation worldwide, and it's resulted in habitat loss that negatively impacts the diversity of our ecosystem. So all of these things considered do not prove that natural automatically means better for the environment or better for your health. It's trying to mean that. It really, really wants to mean that. But it doesn't. It just doesn't.
So in case you're still listening and we haven't totally just assaulted your ears with facts, the next myth, let's talk about high protein equals higher quality. Oh, goodness. Don't get me on the soapbox. But you did.
Get on it.
You said, Steph, handle protein, and I'm going to just climb up on my soapbox. And protein is just one nutrient in the whole scheme of all these required nutrients that we need. And nutrition as a whole is not just about protein. It's not about protein or meat first. It's not about higher protein, higher quality, better. It's about balance, right? Like we need all balance in life. And protein is just one of them. But let's take that a step further. Protein balance and protein requirements are drastically different, not only from cats and dogs, because we know that dogs are not large cats and cats are not small dogs, but also within those species, we're talking various factors like life stage, activity level. I mean, what you're going to feed a kitten or a puppy is not the same thing that you're going to feed Annie, who's 14 years old, sleeping next to my feet right now. Homegirl is not burning through the protein. Like she isn't. And even taking that a step further, depending on their conditions that they may have as they get older, or maybe just genetically they have some different conditions, that can actually affect protein requirements. So high protein all the time isn't always the best thing, but it's also not really great for our environment. It's not great for our grocery budget. Protein is literally the most expensive nutrient when we break it all down. It's our most expensive nutrient. It's our pets. So let's think about like why it is so expensive. Not only is it the sexy nutrient because we have to have it, we need it all, but protein is often one of the most resource intensive components of our pet food. If you're thinking this, the cost that it takes and all the resources for like our livestock, that's mainly protein, but it's going into pet food, it's going into our food. So you have to think about like sustainability wise, resource wise, it's very expensive.
It's not about protein doesn't equal anything. Protein is just protein. It's a nutrient that we need, but we also need a bunch of other nutrients. So yeah, it's part of the puzzle, right? We can all agree protein's an essential macronutrient for us and for our animals, right? But we've kind of come to this point where we're not going to have as enough protein to feed all the people and pets that are going to inhabit the earth in the not too distant future, right? Protein supplies are plateauing, demand keeps rising. We're seeing high protein in everything. We need to find
Even our
better.
coffee.
Exactly, literally. Coffee, I see protein ice cream now. I'm like,
Yeah.
please just let me have my
Protein
ice cream.
Pop-Tarts. And let me tell you, I'm not eating Pop-Tarts because I'm getting my protein in, okay?
I'm eating it as a little treat, okay? Like,
Yeah.
let's be so for real. But yeah, we just need to find better sources, more sustainable sources, and sources that can complement our current supply of animal-based and plant-based proteins. Because, we're not saying we need to stop eating protein. That's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying we need to find better ways to get it and better ways to feed it to sustain the population and the planet. So to speak to that a little bit, we have our second guest today. His name is Paul Shapiro. He's the co-founder and CEO of the Better Meat Company, which is taking exactly this kind of alternative approach to protein, in part inspired by Paul's own personal experiences.
When I was a young teenager, somebody showed me this video, and I'm old enough that this video meant back then like a VHS on a VCR, like there was no YouTube or internet. And my friend showed me this video that was basically showing what it's like for animals who are used for food, and what it's like for them when they are confined in cages where they can barely move an inch their entire lives, or when they are put into slaughterhouses. I wouldn't want any animal to be treated like that. And the fact that they were pigs rather than dogs was very immaterial to me. I just thought no animal deserves this type of abuse.
Yeah, we all know somebody who's watched Food Inc. and gone vegan as a result. Shout out my little sister. I see you and hear you. But as a result of Paul's experience learning about the way that industrialized protein production systems work, he actually decided to write a book.
It's called Clean Meat, How Growing Meat Without Animals Will Revolutionize Dinner in the World. And from there, I ended up deciding that maybe instead of just writing about the people who are pioneering food technologies that could help render the use of animals for food obsolete, maybe I would just become one of them myself. And so that's, in a nutshell, more than 3 decades of the history of my life that have been devoted to trying to reduce the suffering of animals, in large part through the creation of new technologies that might make our use of them less important to us.
So this is the next evolution of protein. Not really a revolution and not a total replacement, but the exploration of a viable alternative protein that could either complement or coexist as a protein supply without taxing the environment that we already have is, I think, something really cutting edge. And unfortunately, not many people are jumping on it. I don't know why. But according to Paul, much like we evolved from using whale oil to kerosene, from horses to carts to cars, adopting alternative proteins like mycoproteins is simply really the next step in the evolution of mankind and really pet food.
If you think about like energy, right? So we have been using fossil fuels for a long time. Now we want to move away from fossil fuels. And there's lots of different ways that we could do that. We could use wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, nuclear energy, and so on. Well, similarly, there's lots of different ways that we can try to recreate the meat experience without animals. One of them is plant-based meat, so taking crops like soybeans or wheat or peas and converting them into things that taste like animal meat. Another is called clean meat or cultivated meat, which is basically taking animal cells and growing them outside of an animal's body to create real, actual animal meat, but simply divorced from having to use the animal. And then the third is what we at the Better Meat Co. do, which is instead of using plants and instead of using animals, we use fungi. And so we're growing microbial fungi, not mushrooms. We're growing mycelium, or the root-like structure of fungi. And that fungi that we grow, which we call rhizomycoprotein, is not only has a very meat-like texture, but it also is packed with protein and fiber. And so in a single serving, if you compare it to, let's say, other foods, our mycoprotein is not only an all-natural whole food that we create through fermentation, but it also has more protein than eggs, and it's a complete protein, meaning it has all the essential amino acids. It's got more iron than beef, more zinc than beef, more potassium than bananas, more fiber than oats. It is a true superfood. And so you get all the things about meat that you want: texture, protein, iron, zinc, but you don't get the things about meat that you don't want: animal cruelty, saturated fat, cholesterol, environmental degradation, and more. And so as we look into the future and we see that more and more humans are going to be on the planet, we have 8 billion of us today, and there's going to be 10 billion of us in another 25 years. The question is, how are we going to feed all of us, right? All these people are going to want to eat meat. And so the question is, how can we produce enough food and enough protein for these billions of people who are going to be on the planet and the rest of us too? And the reality is that we cannot do this by going big with animal agriculture. We have to do it by going small with microbial agriculture.
So the name of the game for sustainable innovation, and I'm going to get a little nerdy here. So fast forward if you need to, but this is some juicy tea and you're going to want it. So just bear with me here. It's life cycle analysis, or LCA. This is a study. It looks at the entire life cycle of an ingredient, how and where it's sourced, how it's transported, processed, refined, blended, transported again, everything that goes into the making of this finished ingredient, to determine whether it's more or less sustainable than something else. So this is where the idea of trade-offs, remember Allison said sustainability is really all about trade-offs. This is where that concept really comes into play. Where one ingredient may require less land and water to grow and harvest, it could be surprisingly complicated and resource intensive to process and transport. So we could be using way more energy in that process. We could drive up the ingredient's total carbon footprint, even though from a sourcing perspective, the numbers look really awesome. So that's what makes it super, super important for any brand that's seeking some kind of sustainability claim or some kind of sustainability swap, like an ingredient swap, to do the research, to do the comparative study through the LCA, to figure out exactly what those trade-offs are and how to inform the decision that we're going to make on how we're going to move forward. Because you don't know until you know. And then when you know, you can make a more informed decision. Anyway, the Better Meat Company has done the LCA. It's done its homework on mycoprotein, and they found some pretty compelling sustainability benefits from the ingredient.
Life cycle analyses show that mycoprotein takes up a tiny fraction of the resources needed to raise cattle for food, as an example, literally 99% less land, and far fewer greenhouse gas emissions and more. And so even if you aren't concerned about the treatment of the animals who we are farming, if you want more space for wildlife, right? If you want to have more wild spaces where wildlife can exist in their habitat, we shouldn't be cutting down all of these trees so that we can graze cattle or grow crops for farmed animals. Instead, we can leave these forests intact or reforest them and just grow mycoprotein instead. And so this is one of the best ways that I can see, at least, in order to reduce our own footprint.
So, when in doubt, ask for those LCAs. Show it. Let's see it. Let me see them LCAs. And if they don't have it, they aren't working on one, but continue to make these bold, sexy sustainability claims, time out, red flag, no way. But again, like you said, Jordan, and like Allison said, it's all about trade-offs. So sustainability or sustainable inventions, nope. Sustainable innovations can't possibly check every box. And that's why we need a diverse range of solutions, or we really should have a diverse range of solutions and initiatives working together to make a greater, greener impact.
Yeah. The challenge definitely, it's not that we don't have great ideas or great solutions that we can try to implement. The challenge, it's really figuring out how to mobilize those ideas from products that are super niche, right? Like you just said, not a lot of people are catching on to alternative protein sources. And that's kind of a shame. What we need to do is move these more niche ideas into the mainstream, or at least that's what I think that we need to do. I'm not a grand strategist or anything like that. But at this point, y'all are probably thinking, okay, great. Fungi sounds super cool. My dog might eat a bug. Upcycled ingredients make sense, but why does every sustainable product seem to cost way more?
And it's because most of us, or for most of us, it's not like we want to be unsustainable, right? Like, spare the straw, I'll be sustainable that way. But part of the answer is, of course, economics. It always comes down to economics. And sustainability requires finding better solutions. Sure, but those solutions can't make a notable impact if they aren't being produced and implemented at scale. And what we're talking about is really, you can't do things in a small little box. You have to do things large for it to make a large impact and be relatively cost savvy, or at least not hitting your pocketbook so hard. Many sustainable ingredients are simply newer and aren't being produced at scale that needs to be implemented to be able to use them across the industry. We're talking like insect protein. It's really a great example, right? So here's a snippet from Liz Kutzos, president of Black Soldier Fly Larvae ingredient producer EnviroFlight.
We're 10 years into this, maybe. We've been in operation and commercial scale for like 6. And I think our colleagues in the industry that are doing well and growing are right around that 6 or 7 years in commercial scale. That's nothing. We're still in our infancy, and that comes with higher costs.
So limited scale also impacts availability, right? When something's less available, that's usually justification to make it more expensive. According to Pierre-Luc Gingras, president and owner of a few pet food and care brands, including an insect-based pet food, Wilder Harrier, he says black soldier fly larvae ingredients, while not necessarily cheap, are significantly less expensive than other insect protein ingredients like crickets.
So crickets, for example, will be $25,000 a ton, which black shoulder fly will be $6,000 a ton. So it's almost 5 times cheaper. And the reason why it's cheaper is it's easier to do a mass production of those black shoulder fly, and it's faster as well.
So you have scale, you have availability, then you have demand. And demand for more sustainable pet food is kind of tricky, right? First and foremost, we're all looking for a safe product that will support our pets' health and well-being. From there, the door to sustainability claims open, but when we're contending with price and just considering our general distrust of sustainability claims, this is where the bottom really falls out. We've seen this for upcycled ingredients. And we also heard it for invasive species like green crab and Asian carp, as illustrated by Deb Suchman, co-founder and co-owner of Polka Dog.
Just because it's sustainable doesn't mean people are going to spend more money on it. And it's just more about how do you fit that into their lifestyle. And part of that is talking about, is it sustainable, but it also has health benefits. And people may want to lead a sustainable lifestyle, but they might not want to pay extra for it. So it's a lot to fit in. So I think it's not just enough to be trying to be a good sustainable company. You have to really be mindful of cost, and you have to be like talking about like how that affects the health benefits for their dog.
So what we consistently find that even pet owners who claim on surveys to spend X amount more for sustainable pet food still experience sticker shock in the checkout line, right? Guilty. This also fluctuates depending on where you are in the world. When asked whether they pay more for pet food made with local ingredients, 95% of French pet owners said yes, but only 69 of UK owners said the same. And for our eco-friendly packaging, 66% of Belgian pet owners said that they would pay more for it compared to 76% of pet owners right here in the US. So the willingness is there, absolutely, but it's not universal. And that even erodes faster when you get to the register.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point, because I think right now most pet food companies are passing on these costs, more sustainable ingredients and more sustainable practices, maybe in the plant or in distribution. They're passing those extra costs down to consumers. We're starting to see a shift from individual accountability, right? Make sure you recycle and you can save the earth, to corporate responsibility, which is, long been debated when it comes to the way that we should tackle all of this.
Is it up to companies to be like, I have a responsibility to only put on shelves something that is not coming at the cost of the environment? And this is a perennial debate in the sustainability world of like, does individual action or does corporate action mean more? And I swing back and forth in my beliefs, but for this conversation, I would like to swing over to the company responsibility side, because I don't think it's fair to like ask customers to be like, you have to pay more. Like, I think it is a business can just have so much more impact. They can have impact at scale. They can figure out how to build out these supply chains so that there's lower costs in the future. I want to say we have a lot of work to do, because from my perspective, a lot of the pet food brands that are leading in sustainability do come at some amount of cost premium. And this is just like a huge problem to solve. But that being said, I don't think that is always a black and white area, because again, bringing up byproducts could have less environmental impact. They also could be less expensive. So there are like some sneaky things that make a product sustainable and also might make it less expensive.
So, what exactly are we supposed to do with this information? First, hang on. Feel better, right? Deep breaths. Everything's going to be good. Feel better. Give yourself some grace in all things in life, everything. At the beginning of the episode, we were talking about guilt, even mom guilt. Give yourself grace for everything. You don't need to decode every label. We really don't. We barely do. Or buy the most expensive option to be sustainable. You don't have to get those fancy paper straws. It exists on a spectrum, like most things in life. And there are ways to match your lifestyle to the types of eco-friendly, sustainable initiatives you want to support. And then second, it's about progress. We're all in this journey of sustainability throughout life. And so it's about progress, not perfection. We've said it before, it's not about perfection. So sustainability, again, it's about trade-offs, 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 trade-offs. And one brand's version of sustainability may look really, really different than the next. And that's okay, right? Spectrum, we're all on the sustainability journey. It just means that they have different problems to solve in order to be their most sustainable.
PSC has plenty of members that are selling human grade products. And I also feel like there's nothing wrong with that. I think like they just have a different set of sustainability strategies to tackle. So like for them, like maybe regenerative beef or regenerative products is a key focus area, because let's say if you're going to take that really prime cut of meat, then like how can you use that process to then create some good in the world? So again, like there's no right answer. It's like you can have a game of trade-offs in that space as well.
What does meaningful progress actually look like for you and I, for pet parents listening today? I think it starts with asking better questions, right? Instead of going into a store, going online and asking whether a product is sustainable, right? We know that's not enough. We want to know what specifically makes it sustainable. What goals has the company set in terms of sustainability? How are they measuring success? And are they being transparent about the way that they're getting there? Right? We've said this before. Companies that are genuinely committed to what they're doing are going to be proud, loud and proud to discuss these things with you. So just ask the question. Ask the brand directly, ask the retailer that you're shopping at. And if you can't get a good answer, the answer probably doesn't exist. And that should be your answer.
Is your answer.
So a few more tips here. Allison's tried and true tips for pet parents wanting to dig deeper and ask more questions and get better answers about sustainability claims they see on pack.
If you are shopping in person, I actually feel like find a store employee and say, where is your sustainability section? Or where do you have sustainable products in the store? Do you have a recommendation about a product that is really good for the environment? I'll be honest, every time I do that, the retailer is like, what? If you're going straight to the brands, I would really drill in on goals. So asking or trying to figure out if a brand has set any sustainability goals, and then not just what have they set, but where are they tracking their progress? So is it a specific metric? And then how long have they been tracking it? What is their plan to get better over time? Those kinds of goal-related questions hold companies accountable to just being transparent about what they're up to and trying to be better.
And just in case you need another reminder, there are many paths to sustainability. It can include ingredient sourcing, manufacturing practices, packaging, transportation, and it can also include food waste reduction. And that's just listing a few. Sometimes the most sustainable thing a company is doing isn't even printed on the front of the bag. So as we wrap up today, it's clear the pet industry's sustainability journey will be a long, very windy road involving ongoing innovation, experimentation, and continuous improvement.
Totally agree. And I think, despite all the kind of doom and gloom that surrounds sustainability and we can get kind of bogged down by how overwhelming it feels, I think that's kind of what excites me most. Right? Not thinking about where we are at today, but where we could be in 10, 20, 50 years from now. And I know that excites Allison and Paul as well.
The future is going to be won by those who can manufacture food in the most efficient way. And it's really important for the United States and frankly, every nation to prioritize this type of efficient protein production by looking at animal-free protein sources, whether it's through fermentation of microbes or whether it is through plant-based proteins or even animal cell-cultured meat. You might have like a bread maker or an ice cream maker on your kitchen counter right now, but what if you had a meat maker? You could just buy like little spores of fungi and drop them in and come back the next morning and you have freshly brewed mycoprotein on your counter right there. Like that would be pretty awesome. It sounds like the Jetsons, but I think it's like not that hard to imagine.
If you leave here today with one insight, let it be this: sustainability isn't about perfection. It's about progress.
Exactly. There's no single ingredient, packaging format, certification, or brand promise that's magically going to solve every environmental challenge. We know that sustainability is ultimately a series of trade-offs. And understanding those trade-offs is often more important than chasing the latest trend or meaningless marketing claim.
And you heard it today. The consumers have more influence than they sometimes realize. The question we have to ask, the products we support, and the expectations we place on companies all help shape the direction of this industry.
At the same time, meaningful change can't rest entirely on you and I and consumers as individuals, right? Companies have a responsibility to improve transparency, invest in better solutions, and make sustainable choices more accessible, aka affordable.
And remember, when you're looking at all those bags, and if it becomes overwhelming, which we all know it can be, you don't need to decode every label or buy the most expensive product on the shelf to really make that difference. Stay curious, ask questions, and make informed decisions is where you can make the largest impact.
And if you'd like to dig deeper into pet industry sustainability initiatives and stories, check out today's show notes for links to our past episodes on insect protein, upcycled ingredients, byproducts, invasive species, regenerative agriculture, and I think there's even a few more. A huge thank you to Allison Reser Hamburger and Paul Shapiro for sharing their time and insights with us today.
Thank you for tuning in to the Barking Mad podcast. If you'd like to learn more about BSM, please visit us at www.bsmpartners.net.
Don't forget to follow us on your favorite leading podcast platform. And if you found today's episode useful, share it with a friend. We'd like to thank our dedicated podcast team: Jacob Parker, Katie Wolf, Neely Bowden-Lewis, Ada Miette Thomas, and Anna Guilfoyle. A special shout out to David Perez for the original music. See you next time.